Off the air. There we go. Hey, welcome to welcome to Fire Engineering's Humpday Hangout, to our show, the issues and challenges in today's fire service. I'm Chief Rick Lasky. My co-host and hangout partner, Terry McGrath. Chief Terry McGrath is on vacation, and we're hoping he's having a great time. Terry's a great dad, and I'm sure he's spending some quality time with his kids. He's out, and he'll be back with us next month. Today, my partner, and he's almost always here with us anyway. So is the boss, Chief Bobby Halton, and we've got a great group hanging out with us today. As a reminder, if you have any questions, fire them off to us on Twitter. Just make sure you add hashtag FE Talk for Fire Engineering Talk, so we can track those. We'll try to do our best to get to those as we can. Today, Bobby and I are hanging out with a great group of folks, a special team, Brothers Helping Brothers, and we're going to be discussing the efforts made and being made today in firefighter cancer prevention and mental health awareness. Before we go any further, Bobby, I always say this. I've said this literally bunches of times that you're aware of, but for our viewers, I've always said I'm honored and to work for a boss and work for a company such as Clarion now, the Penwell Group, where Chief Bobby Halton embraces both of our topics, firefighter cancer awareness and mental health awareness, where before, we've talked about cancer awareness before, people give you the nod and all that, but talking about mental health awareness was just a bad thing. And Bobby and I have both had family, my son in Afghanistan, his son, that have went through some very serious issues, and he's done everything he can in a great way to bring it to the forefront, where it's okay to talk about it now. It's okay to ask for help, and I just always, Bobby, I didn't want to start the show off without saying that, buddy. So thanks again, pal.
Yeah, no, it's a critically important topic. Thank you for joining us, everybody, today. This is amazing. We've got Sarah and Steve and Nick and Kenny and Jimmy and this is just unbelievable. Jennifer, it's just unbelievable. It's an unbelievable group of folks that are joining with us today. Everybody on this group is working on some aspect of firefighter wellness, which is, I think, a great overarching term, right? And everybody's got tremendous stuff to add. We're going to talk a bunch about Nikki's put together a show which has a great cause that they're raising money for, to help support firefighters who are going through stuff, right? And much like the Florian program, they have a great conference coming up in Raleigh in October. This conference is in Brothers Helping Brothers. Nikki, where are we at? Where's your conference in?
It's going to be Middletown, Ohio, and it's going to be October 19th and 20th.
Right, and then so it's a really cool month for firefighter health and wellness, because Nikki's going to be October 19, 20 in Ohio, and the Rosecrans folks will be out in Raleigh on the 15th and 16th. So you've got the Florian program, Rosecrans 4th annual, out in Raleigh the beginning of the week. So depending on where you are in the country, there's no excuse to not go to a conference where folks are talking about proactive measures you can take, as well as things you can do when these issues arise. And they're going to arise. They're just going to arise. People are going to get sick and they're going to have issues. It's okay. I've had them. Rick's had them. We've all had them. So, what we're really fostering in the American Fire Service today is really post-traumatic growth. All of these efforts are to help people get stronger and healthier. That's the goal, post-traumatic growth. Tedeschi and Calhoun coined that term in the 1990s. Wonderful guys. Google Tedeschi and Calhoun, post-traumatic growth. They wrote a textbook on it, which is horrible. It's a real textbook. It's like the ASTD manual for training. Your head will explode. It's so boring. But it's worth a read, especially for folks that are keenly interested in it or want to do presentations on it. I highly recommend you take a look at what they're doing. Some other business before I turn it over to Ricky to introduce the rest of our guests. EMS Today we'll have the preliminary program out soon. That's an incredible conference. We're going to be at National Harbor this year in just outside of Prince George County, and Rick will be presenting at EMS Today. I will be there doing my sidewalk act, yelling at you all in the pre-conference, which is what I do, and people seem to enjoy it. So I'll be sure to raise my voice and get really, really upset about something. um, and blame all of you, which is what I do. So we'll have a great conference, though. We've got some incredible presenters coming. We've got folks from Chicago. We've got folks from all around the country. And EMS Today is so critical. So please take a look at it. National Harbor EMS Today, incredible. One of the incredible things that we do at this show, because we can, is we offer what we call group pricing or gang pricing or crew pricing. So if you send like 3 guys, I think it's like $1,000. But for $5,000, you can send your department, which is amazing. So, and the public can't see that we aren't talking. You can unmute your mic anytime you want, Commander. That was Commander Fent. So the commander can talk anytime. So I just want to throw out EMS Today as there. Please take a look at it. Please join us. It's going to be an amazing conference. We're going to have amazing events going on. We've got all kinds of parties and things lined up. It's going to be a great celebration of what we do as medics. And medics are probably the most important person in the world at every scene, because if something goes wrong, you need the medic. I mean, when the call goes out, they're the elite of the elite. So please join us at EMS Today in February. Join us at FDIC. I have not finished picking all the classes, so if you haven't heard, give me some time. If you have heard and you hate me, I'm sorry. If you have heard and you love me, hold that thought till next year, because it's tough. It's always tough, and I apologize. We try to get, 1,200 people wanted to be there. We had to pick 200, and it was very, very tough. And everybody who submitted, I wish we had room for everybody. Maybe someday we will, but thank you for that. So with that being said, one of the reasons that I was excited to get Nick on and to talk about Brothers Helping Brothers and what they're doing in this conference about cancer and mental health that he's doing in Ohio, that we really wanted you to get to, is that he had this group of people who are all doing incredible work that we need to hear from. So Ricky, if you wouldn't mind, taking us around the horn and let everybody kind of update us on what they're doing on the latest cutting edge stuff that they're doing and what they're going to be bringing to Nikki's show. Well, let's do this, because we've got a large group. I'm sorry, hashtag FE Talk if you want to join us. We've got everybody along the bottom there, the bottom bar. So let's start with, first of all, before we go any further, I just want to make sure we acknowledge something for Sarah, Dr. Jenke, but congratulations on receiving the IFC President's Award for all your research and work in firefighter health, and so many people have told you very well deserved. So congratulations on that. It's always great to see somebody get recognized for something. There's a lot of times we recognize people for things and you go, okay, I understand that, but this is really awesome. This is really great. The work you've been doing is awesome. So let's start. Jennifer, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thank you for having me. I am Jennifer Kramer, and I'm an instructor with the Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance. So I will be putting on the Saving Those Who Save Others workshop, and it's mental health awareness and suicide prevention in the fire service.
Outstanding. Jim?
Hey there, I'm Jim Bernica. I'm the founder of the Firefighter Cancer Consultants. I've been working with departments all around the country for really the last 12 years regarding this issue.
Outstanding. Hey, Steve, our next guest, Steve.
Steve Conn with Coleraine Fire Department outside of Cincinnati. And basically I am telling my story of a journey through PTSD and recovery, to try and help break down the stigma surrounding it and to show people that it's okay to talk about the things that we've seen, the things that we've been through, and how we can come out on the other end.
Outstanding. Okay, next, Dr. Kenny Fent.
Hi, I'm Kenny Fent. I'm a research industrial hygienist at NIOSH. I guess I'm one of the folks on this group that, although I'm very interested in the mental health issues, my research is mostly focused on looking at carcinogenic exposures in firefighters.
Outstanding. Then, hey, we're going to move to Dr. Sarah Jenkins. Sarah, a little bit about yourself? Oh, I don't think we can. Can we hear? Can anybody else hear Sarah?
Sarah, I can't hear you. Sarah, look at that top bar. Do you see that little microphone thing? Can you click on that, Sarah? See what it does.
Unmuted.
That's more better. There you go.
Oh, all
got
right.
you now,
I'm just
Sarah.
going to take the headphones off.
Yeah, it was probably the headphones. Sometimes if you don't, your computer doesn't recognize it. That's happened before the headphones don't work. But go ahead, Sarah. Let us know where
All right.
you're doing, where you're from.
Let's try again. I'm the director of the Center for Fire Rescue and EMS Health Research. We've been doing firefighter health research kind of all across the spectrum for about the last decade, and I'll be talking about risks beyond the fire ground, so all the health and wellness stuff.
Outstanding. Again, congratulations. Very, very well deserved. And Nick, yourself and a little bit about Brothers Helping Brothers.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Nick Magato. I'm the founder and co-executive director of Brothers Helping Brothers. We are a nonprofit that helps small and rural fire departments with equipment needs. That's our main focus. And we do have several outreach programs that regard to firefighter education. And then we just started a new program called the Carney Strong Initiative that helps get cancer prevention educational material and actual physical, like wipes and soap and things like that in the hands of small and rural departments throughout the nation as well.
And I know Bobby will join in on this one. It's awesome that you're doing that in the way of helping the smaller rural departments as well. My buddy John.
I just want to put out a disclaimer that Nick's razor broke earlier this morning, but he will be cleaning up that chin.
Well, and it's just something that we've brought up in class several times in this program that, God bless what's going on with Homeland Security. And on the law enforcement side, I was a police officer. I understand that I'm very partial to law enforcement. My wife works for the sheriff here. Billions of dollars are spent every year on that side of things. And we're all fighting for, there's just per ISO, there's just under, 40,000 fire departments in the United States, career and volunteer. And we're fighting for a little bit of money, if you think about it, between the SAFE Act, the Fire Act, and all the rest of this stuff. So to have an organization like yours, Nick, that's stepping up to help some of these smaller departments. We've got people spending money on things, yet we've got fire departments still not wearing proper protective clothing. They don't have portable radios. They're not getting the training they should, so on and so forth. Bobby tries every year with FDIC. He tries to help get some folks at a conference that maybe couldn't afford it. I know the scholarship program has been awesome, but thank you, Nick, for stepping up and helping some of the smaller departments out, especially the more rural. That some of them, like the department here that we volunteered with, like Bobby's, their whole budget is they just had a garage sale, they have a craft show. It's every bit of it's donations. So absolutely crucial what you're doing. So thank you very much. So let's talk. I think we have to, Bobby, if you agree. I think we kind of have to split these two to stay kind of focused. Maybe let's jump into the cancer awareness. And we can maybe follow up with the mental health side when we're halfway through. But let's start talking a little bit about what we're doing efforts wise in the fire service. I have literally a couple hundred videos when I taught for the University of Illinois for the Fire Service Institute. God bless them. Incredible group. But I worked at a time with a bunch of, I used to call them cave people, and even on my job, where if I wore my air pack I remember going to a fire at my truck company, if about 2 blocks from Midway Airport, and if I wore my air pack, and the next fire we went to, a guy named Bob Gleich, he's passed out now. We pull up, I get off the rig, goes, oh, stop here. He goes, can you breathe? You okay? He goes, good. You stay out here. We'll go fight the fire. And my boss pulls up and he's like, what are you doing, Lasky? I said, well, Gleich told me to stay out here because of my air pack on. He goes, and you listen to him? And I worked with a bunch of people. I have all these videos from doing smooth versus fog and flashover, and I'm not snapped up. And there was a time where burnt helmets were cool, for a lot of people, and the crappier your gear looked and all that stuff. And we finally come full circle to say, you know what, keeping that crapped, nasty old hood on when you're sitting in rehab, and all these other things, we just the whole awareness and the things of we're not, it's not your old man's we used to say it's, my dad was a firefighter in the 50s and 60s. It's not the same fire. We're not producing the same. I mean, if you're not wearing your face piece, I'll just deal with that part of it right now with a fire. Forget the rest of it. If you're not wearing it today, you're a fool. And I say that in class. I have no problem saying that. And you can send me all the hate emails you want. I'll come right back at you. You're a fool because it's not what we were burning way back when. So throw that out there. Maybe Sarah, do you want to jump on that one?
I would like to say that I do think you're a fool if you're not doing it. And I'd like to say that we've come full circle, but I've still been to departments and seen places where people have a second set of gear and they hide the dirty gear so the dirty gear can stay dirty. Unfortunately, I think the early adopters and kind of the middle group are getting there, but I think there's still a lot of work to be done, unfortunately.
Well, and you're right. We started purchasing second sets of gear in the late 90s where I was fire chief up north. And then when I got to Louisville, Texas in 2000, we did that. Everybody had a second set of gear. And it was hard. I'll be honest, it was hard to where the point you just ordered them. Said it's an order. You'll follow the order that you're to wear the newest set. The second set is clean, inspected, and ready to go. It's your backup set. So if you booger up this one, you can throw that in the extractor, get it all cleaned up, and wear a clean set. That's the whole point. It's not to look all, crusty and all that. First of all, that doesn't make. I truly believe that doesn't make the firefighter. I've been into the 18th Battalion in the Bronx, my buddy's firehouse, John, and if you see a burnt up helmet, either somebody's getting a medal for making a rescue or somebody screwed up and did something they shouldn't have done, when it comes to that. So I agree with you. We've come full circle the way of trying to make people aware of it, but you're so right there. It's like seatbelts. We talk about seatbelts, yet there's people still don't wear seatbelts. We give out awards for wearing seatbelts. Just throw this out to the group. Some of the other guys, Joe, go ahead and jump in there with your thoughts on where we're going with firefighter cancer awareness.
Well, one of the things that, I noticed when you talk about second set of gear, I mean, some of the departments that I still run and some of the departments that I've been to and around the country that we help out can't even afford the second set of gear, and if you're on duty for 24 hours, you got to wear it like it is. And then hopefully you can wash it in between your time off and the next time you run. But, the second set of gear thing, I mean, I think it's crucial, especially getting more hoods and things like that. A lot of departments nickel and dime you.
Well, just to dovetail, and Kenny, I'd like you to jump in. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I cut you off, Jimmy?
I haven't even started yet.
Steve has something.
Well, before Jimmy starts in, just real quickly, the University of Arizona is just wrapping up a study right now about exposure, which is fascinating. I know Sarah is working with Dr. Burgess down there and their Tucson guys. Kenny, I think you've been giving them some backup too, and I'd love to hear you talk about this. They're looking at inhalation, right? We've been focusing hard lately on dermal, which is great. And, second set of gear, washing, all of it's critically important, not discounting any of it. But it's still fascinating how much we're breathing in on the fire ground and how far the toxins travel from the actual site. I'm just gonna make a prediction, and everybody chime in and tell me what you think. But I've been talking about the kill zone and firefighting downrange now for 10 years. And we've got to start adopting that policy. If you're putting your mask on at the front door, you're an idiot. No disrespect, but it might be too late. We know that those toxins are, okay, pretty straightforward stuff. Hot air gravity currents are rushing out, cool air gravity currents are rushing in. But those hot air gravity currents, as they come rushing out, they're diffusing, right? So they're not just shooting up into the stratosphere. Some of the guys and gals that they were taking urine samples from were battalion chiefs and engineers who were very remote from the structural firefighting, whose urine came back with toxins. So the whole idea about firefighting downrange is some of us have hereditary cancers. I get that. Hell, I'm the poster boy. But the ones that we can mitigate, the ones that we don't have to get through exposure, man, we should do that. I mean, it's like hanging out with, bad people. You wouldn't intentionally hang around with bad people because you'll become a bad person. I mean, heck, I'm just kidding. I was going to throw out one of the political parties, but pick your political party, right? So yeah, pick all of them, pick both of them, pick all three of them these days. They're all bad people. But anyway, because politics is a word. Poly is many and ticks are tiny blood-sucking parasites. But anyway, seriously, the study's going to be coming out. So, we've been focused real hard on dermal. That's important. Clean gear, critically important. But Kenny, Jimmy, chime in. We can't forget about inhalation. For goodness sakes, we can't forget about it. Please chime in.
Well, real quick, let's go before we move too far. Steve, you were going to jump in there a little bit. You said, can you chime in on something? Go ahead, buddy.
First of all, can everyone hear me okay?
A little better, Steve. You're still kind of low.
No one's ever told me I was not.
Pretend you're at a union meeting and they're screwing us again. Yell.
Well, I apologize for the audio quality. But one of the things that we don't have the luxury of having a second set of gear, but we still put procedures and policies and protocols in place to address the carcinogens, doing on-scene decon and getting back. And if we have to take our gear and throw it in the extractor while we are on duty, that unit might be out of service for a couple hours. And we've been able to backfill and make allocations for our gear being out of service because we've recognized that we can't put that stuff back on in the condition that it is. So we've taken some proactive steps to address that until we can get those second sets of gear.
And that's an incredible challenge if you think about it for the fire service as a whole. If you don't have that, this goes back to the cooperation with department to department, that if you don't have the neighbors, if you can't get along with them on fires and you don't have a good automatic and mutual aid agreement with them, how are you going to get them to cover for you for an hour or two while you're taking care of gear? So that everything, it's all about leadership. It goes back to if the bosses want to make it happen, it'll happen, by God, so good point. Bobby, you had something that wanted to jump in there next?
I can. Okay.
Kenny, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kenny.
I was just going to agree with Bobby. I mean, the inhalation route is the most direct route of entry for the carcinogens, and so we can't forget, the measures that need to be taken so we reduce those exposures. Obviously, I think the firefighters know about wearing SCBA during overhaul, but if you're downwind of a structure fire, and I know a lot of times you can't help where you set up the command, you will get exposures from being downwind of the structure fire. Diesel exhaust is something else that we need to be concerned about. So we can't forget about the inhalation route. And then, there's a lot of focus on dermal exposure, and rightly so. But a lot of the research is showing that some of the absorption of these carcinogens happens while you're inside the structure fire. And, I don't want to raise too much alarm about it, but there is some absorption that's taking place directly through the skin while you're inside the structure fire. And, some of those contaminants will deposit on your skin, and you may actually have a window of time to get them off. So I know we heard from others on the panel about the use of skin wipes. I think that's a great approach. Showering within an hour, all of those things are really important. So it's really a multifaceted approach to try to control, firefighters' exposures to carcinogens.
Well, that was the big. I know I had the big push. And I very proudly say this. My I-Chief hazmat folks will, confirm it. I'm actually later on next week at the Pennsylvania Hazmat Conference. But I'm a hazmat geek. I'm very proud of that. I was very active in that, and I was always amazed. I have these pictures, and you'll appreciate this. What you were just talking about, Kenny, is I've got this picture. It's the guys in the level A suits walking up to I call it the magic barrier tape, the yellow banner tape, do not cross, and they walk over to talk to whether it's the entry team leader or the ops guy, and they walk over, and as this chief in his white shirt walks over to these guys that are all full, they just come out, he bumps the tape and he goes, ooh, like I went too far. And I'm like, there's not a wall there. There's not a wall where the vapor, you don't have this cloud like we see on television. It's just the same. You're exactly right. It's just because you're not in zero visibility doesn't mean you're not breathing this stuff in. So that's a great point.
Well, I was just going to say, let's see. Okay. Regarding your second set of gear, it's still a struggle for a lot of departments. They haven't said it's a necessity yet, and because it's quite a big expense. So, like Cap said, you have to have some kind of backup, whether you're wearing a buddy's gear that's somebody close to size to you, or having some kind of backup set, so you don't have to put on that contaminated gear again throughout your shift. As far as the culture goes, I'll go one more thing about the gear. For my union actually had to negotiate that and put it on our contract. It was that big of a deal to get it, and it was that big of a fight with my city as well. So, but obviously we won, and we're better off now because of that. As far as the culture goes, it has gotten a lot better. I was there a dozen years ago. I remember being at FDIC, sitting in a cancer booth 10 years ago. We were on the second floor. The only way you would find us is if you were lost. I mean, that was it. And now you can't throw a rock without seeing some kind of booth that has something cancer related. So that's absolutely great. We're not quite there yet, but we're much better off than we were. And then the last thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Rick.
No, go ahead. Go ahead with your last thing. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, as far as SCBAs go, overhaul, it's just, I see it everywhere. It's, guys are still going around with their CO monitor, their HCN. We're all clear. Go ahead and take your mask off. And those two things have no relation to your arsenic, your vinyl chloride, whatever it may be, your formaldehyde. We have no way of knowing. So, and we just have to accept SCBAs start to finish.
Well, and you're exactly right. And the whole turnout gear issue, and like I said, whether it's that, I mentioned seatbelts briefly, because if you have good bosses, if you have great leaders, if they care about their people, then they're going to do whatever they can to make it happen. Bobby and I've talked about this. If you're fire chief, we've seen the fire SUVs that have satellite dishes on them and fax machines, because you never know how you're going to have to order some Chinese food from the scene. But all the different things that they need. If you should have bald tires on your chief's car if your guys are still wearing. If your men and women are still wearing crappy gear and aren't being protected properly, you should have bald tires on your car before you have the fancy fire. We've been there, Bobby. We've been there where we walk in and the guys have holes in their gear and there's nothing, you know what I'm saying? It's just, and that's just the tip. That's just, those are the tells that tell you if that's the fact, they're not taking care of the rest of the stuff. And this whole, the whole just breathing, our good friend Jeff Welch, Bobby, he's fighting cancer right now. Never smoked a day in his life, athlete, strong guy. He wrote an article for Fire Engineering. We had him do it years ago. Jeff and I were up in North Idaho, pulled up at a warehouse fire. It just had smoke pushing out. And we're parked like the other side of the parking lot. We're nowhere in any visible smoke. We're both putting our gear on and the engine's there leading out. And he looks at me and he goes, do you smell flares like sulfur? And I go, yeah, we both smelled sulfur real bad. And long story short, what ended up happening was it was a ballast that dripped onto some cardboard boxes. There's a warehouse that stored records for people in paper boxes. And it started a couple pallets started going. Well, when the water from the hose obviously hit that, the problem was the boxes were these boxes that were made and dipped in sulfur. And the sulfur is supposed to keep the paper documents from getting moldy and all that. Well, you know what happens? We catch them on fire. We add water to it. All of a sudden, all at once, guys were dropping. Everybody, anything shiny turned dull. It was just, and to be honest, you couldn't really see. There wasn't any smoke. It wasn't like you were standing. It was just amazing, and that's a lesson learned. And I think the article he wrote for Bobby was, smells and bells. That whole week, watch how firefighters address dumpster fires. What do people put in dumpsters? And they don't even gear up or they don't mask up or just and they're standing in the smoke. And I'm like, so until bosses are going to say, put your face piece on, until bosses are going to say, otherwise we don't need anybody riding the front seat of the fire engine. Just have an empty seat there because, until they're willing to step up and say something, I just don't see it changing is in the direction we want it to go.
Rick, even just talking about the dumpster fires this last week, we pulled up and we just used our deck gun on it. There was no need to get exposure to any of us. Just empty our tank on it, fill back up, and be done. Move on. Well,
and there's so many, we zero in when it comes to the line of duty deaths, and our good friend Bill Carey's doing an incredible job tracking the numbers. Like last year, he posted something like 250 days without, we still haven't had a firefighter die inside a structure, but we go into the heart attack and stress. And my question to him is, why are all these 32, 28, 45-year-olds that appear to be in good shape, no cardiac history, no plugged arteries, they weren't electrocuted. Bobby, you talk about, I think it was Providence or whatever, this whole hydrogen cyanide, if we're not looking after our people, taking care of them, the next day they go home, it's like magic ink. That stuff's gone. So, Kenny, go ahead. You wanted to jump in there?
Yeah, I'm going to introduce Kenny's topic real quick here because we were talking about it in our little chat box, Steve and Kenny and I. But to the Providence deal, what's so fascinating about the Providence deal, you know when that happened? 16 years ago. That's 16 years ago. And now we're talking about moving the kill zone out, right? Sarah's talking about let's mask up in the street. That was 17 years ago that 3 men went to the hospital for hydrogen cyanide, 2 of whom were 75 feet from the building. So with that, so Steve brought up a great comment, and Steve was talking about gear off-gassing. Kenny did some research into that. We're not going to get into the old PFOAs and PFOBs in gear and all of that, which is currently being researched very heavily, long chain Cs and all of that. Currently there's a lot of discussion going on about that will exceed our time frame for today. But Kenny, can you talk about what we know from your studies about off-gassing gear?
Sure, Bobby. So, most of the research that's been done looking at the off-gassing of contaminated turnout gear has focused on the volatile compounds. And, those compounds typically evaporate pretty quickly. And what we found is that, right after firefighting, you will have, a level of, the benzenes and the toluenes that are off-gassing from the gear, and we can detect those. But because they evaporate so quickly, we're finding that within about 45 minutes or so, most of those volatiles will be completely evaporated from the gear, or mostly evaporated from the gear. The question that remains is what happens to some of the larger molecular weight compounds that are semi-volatile. And that's research that's still going on. We've done some testing looking at those. They're going to evaporate at much lower levels. So it's sort of a half, glass half full, glass half empty kind of argument here. Benzene, of course, is one of the carcinogens we're worried about. That will evaporate quickly from the gear. We know that from several studies that have been done. But there are other compounds that we're concerned about that might continue to evaporate from the contaminated gear. So I don't know if that, perhaps opens it up for discussion, but, it is another route of entry for firefighters. I don't know that it's as significant of a route of entry as, actual, the exposures you receive during a response.
I guess my question for the group would be, we've talked about being aware. We've talked about, whether it's inhalation or absorb, whatever, all that different stuff. I guess with the limited amount of time we have today, let's talk about the proactive side of it. What should we be doing? We've got a lot of people. I just had a guy just hit me and say, I understand it. It's serious. I understand it's bad. Give us some ideas. What do we need to do, as a public safety group to push forward on the more proactive side? So I'll throw that to the group. Bobby and I were talking about that earlier because we've got you guys, all the studies, everything else. Okay, we know, we recognize. Tell our viewers, okay, now we understand this is serious. It's been serious a long time. Here's some ideas. We talk about wipes and other things. What are some of the ideas? What are some of the things the movers and shakers are doing out there for this?
I can jump in there if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Jump in there. All right. Well, the key to all this stuff is going to be reduce your exposure any chance you can. That means wearing your gear, wearing your mask, everything else. But also, it comes to decon, on-scene decon, at the station decon. Clean up all this stuff as best as you can and reduce your risk. Reduce your risk to these chemicals, reduce your risk to exposure to the diesel exhaust. I mean, just reduce the exposure. That's the key.
I agree completely. And, there are a number of best practices kind of documents that are circulating in the fire service. Healthy in, healthy out is one that I think is good. It's comprehensive. A lot of those measures, it's not rocket science. And I mean, truthfully, if you were to look at a lot of other occupations, I think they would be shocked at kind of the way business has been run in the fire service. And what's being proposed in some of those best practices documents really are best practices in a lot of other occupations. It's exposure reduction and control. And I think that's going to make a big difference in terms of, firefighters' exposures to carcinogens. I mean, I think you could reduce your exposures by 50% or more from taking a lot of those measures. And then, I'm sure Sarah might be able to jump in, just, cancer prevention in general, healthy eating and exercise and all of those other important ways of reducing your cancer risk are also very important to take. Maybe Sarah can jump in there.
Yeah, I was just going to say that very thing, Kenny, that it's important that to do the reduction on the fireground and after an event, but at the same time, if you look at the increased risk from firefighting, overall we see 10% in the Daniel study. Some of the health behaviors, things like binge drinking, can increase your risk if you're a consistent binge drinker, 100%. And so there are some risk factors, I think, that are specific to the fire service that put you in increased risk in addition to the carcinogen exposure. So I think overall, cancer prevention is important too.
And to dovetail, I know we want to talk about mental health here, but just to dovetail on what Sarah just said, one of the things where I'm advocating for with the fire apparatus manufacturers is that they supply us with breathing air for the operators. In other words, the pump operators should be on breathing air. As sophisticated as some of our equipment is, there's no reason why, if the command post is set up and we find it to be, in a tough spot, that we couldn't have breathing air for the guys and gals who man the command post, whether it's a Suburban with a tank on it so that you can go on breathing air if you need to, if you work out of the back of your buggy. I mean, it's simple stuff that we could do. I don't know why every engine doesn't have a cylinder in it that has enough air for 3 or 4 people for a prolonged amount of time, so that the operator could be on air, and the consumption rates for someone who's just operating the pump are going to be significantly lower. Now, obviously, pump operator may have to travel from the hydrant and do other activities. But once he's just dealing with the panel, or the ladder operator's just dealing with watching the ladder and advancing the bucket, there'd be ways to do it, and it's just a matter of asking for it, right? And just not breathing smoke and doing everything we can to not breathe smoke.
Bobby, you said it. It's about limiting, right? Limiting the exposure. There's times that, like you said, how you're not going to hit a hydrant, but at the same time, if the bosses just worked on limiting the exposure, first off, I think you'd knock off a bunch of those things. The car exhaust thing, I used to drive crazy here. I'd show up and they're all standing in the back of their SUVs, their fire SUVs, with their $16,000 command center, and they got their safety guy going, left park rolling, everybody needs to stay masked up, and they're all standing exhaust. I used to walk up with my CO, and I used to drive them crazy. You guys are standing exhaust in your cars, and you're telling them to keep their face pieces on. CO, just take a CO is higher here at the back of your car than it is where they're at, so.
Well, and before the simple example is that I'm a Roman Catholic, so I can say this. As a Roman Catholic, we practice the rhythm method. And you know what you call somebody who practices the rhythm method? Daddy. So, we've been practicing the rhythm method in the fire service for the last, 70 years since we got air packs. And a lot of us are daddies and mommies. So, people always say to me, well, it's the way we've always done it. Well, years ago, I wore a diaper. I don't do that currently, although I think about it, but I don't. So on that cheery note, let's bring in, Steve has an incredible story. And I want to bring Steve in for a second because he's going to tell it. And it's a first-person story. I think it's an important story. And just to preempt Steve here is I had an experience, was it yesterday? Day before yesterday. We celebrating our wedding anniversary. My wife and I, we drove out to Eastern Oklahoma. Just before we got to the park we were going to celebrate our anniversary, and there was a head-on collision. A lady in a rainstorm turned incorrectly into oncoming traffic and got hit at 70 miles an hour. So she was basically at a dead stop, and a pickup truck hit her. I got out of the car. We were the first responders there with some other civilians, rendered aid, did what I could do. you know, my whole life, I always told people nothing's ever bothered me. I was lying. Because I had a hard time the whole rest of it. Maybe I'm just getting older and more sensitive. Maybe I'm losing my edge. But man, and I respond still as a volunteer. But that was one of those anomaly calls, like when you get there and you don't have any tools and you don't have any backup. And I'm asking the cops and the other civilians, "Are you an EMT? You know anything?" And they're looking at me like, "ENG, RTD, what are you talking about?" So basically on my own for a while. And it was interesting how much I thought about it afterwards. Not that it really bothered me, but I thought about it. So Steve, you got a great story, and why don't you share, and then we can get some conversation going. I certainly want to hear from Jennifer and talk more about what's going to be happening in October, 19th and 20th in Ohio, 1920 in Ohio, Brothers Helping Brothers, and other great causes, and which Nick will tell us about before we close. But wellness, cancer, mental health is all going to be there, and Steve's going to tell his story there. Steve, can you give us like the 3,000, 10,000 foot view?
Well, I took my headphones out. Hopefully that helps out. Can you hear me better?
It does, and you look better too.
Oh, well, thank God. Okay. Basically, my story is not unlike firefighters have been encountering for years. In 2003, I had a Mayday situation where I fell into a basement fire. I was trapped for several minutes, and I was able to self-rescue, even though that we still had the RIT team responding, and all those procedures were all in place. And this is 15 years ago, and the events that immediately followed my event, the minimization, the lack of acknowledgement, and the downplaying of the entire event set me up for a mental health breakdown. I was told in no uncertain terms, I made a bigger deal out of it than what it was. It was no big deal. I had people telling me that my critical incident was not really a critical incident. I was just basically making mountains out of molehills. And when you take that kind of attitude towards somebody who has just had a critical event, now what I try and tell people is that the individual is the one who is going to define their critical event. If you try and define it for somebody and they start listening to you, you could be setting them up for potential problems. And that's what happened with me. So what I'm doing right now is I'm telling my story. I'm going around and just telling them about my breakdown and the treatment that I received. Now this is actually my breakdown happened 2 years after my incident. So for 2 years, I had thoughts going through my head of, did I screw up? What did I do? Could I have done anything differently? And also thinking that am I really a good firefighter? Because I was told I really made a big deal out of nothing. So when I had my breakdown, I wasn't able to tell anybody about it. We're in a different time now. So I'm telling people it's okay to have something like this happen and to go and seek help, to go and talk to your people that you're working with, talk to your bosses, and sit around the dinner table at the fire station and talk about, just like the Brady Bunch did, what did you guys do today? You talk to your crews, and it's what we got to do. We got to take care of each other. So my message is one of just, we got to take care of each other. So that's it in a nutshell. Maybe a 10,000 foot level there.
Well, and it's an incredible message. I'm going to bring up a point a little bit here about how far we've come. I know in my world where exactly, you used to be teased and ridiculed, and there's still that going on, unfortunately, but not like it used to be. Again, I was very open about my compliment towards Bobby and what he's doing, his efforts. But Jennifer, you're working for a pretty incredible group. When I was the interim chief last year at a department, I met with our reserves, and this very nice lady in the group handed me her business card, and I went, "Oh, you're Sarah LePaca. I know you." And how many times have you met with our firefighters here to talk about what you do for that group? And she says, "Never." And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me. You're one of our reservists, one of our volunteers, and we've never had you." So From your end, there's some great strides you're making to address the whole mental health awareness and bring it forward to where we're being more proactive about it and paying attention to people.
Absolutely. And that's where we're trying to get into every single department and talk to every single first responder that we can and promote the behavioral health programs that we can help people implement in the department, so that when an issue does happen, like Steve mentioned, that's so common of the culture and the treatment that men and women receive. No one person is going to respond to a call the same as another, and how those calls impact every single person needs to be addressed. And if someone is struggling, the unfortunate aspect of the fire culture used to be that you just suck it up and move on to the next call. And that can't be the way that things are handled. So understanding how to talk to one another, understanding, signs and symptoms in your brothers and sisters that they might be facing, and just utilizing the resources such as FBHA to get into the departments and to help educate and promote those behavioral health programs, promote the peer support. Who do we turn to when a critical incident happens, like Steve mentioned?
Well, and Bobby and I have mentioned this in class, Jennifer, where, we all talk about, you ask everybody in class, so what are the signs and symptoms? What do you see? What do you notice that tells you? What are the tells that tell you that someone else's child is traveling down the wrong path in life? And they'll raise their hands and say who they're hanging with, their clothes, are they unkept, their grades, blah, 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 all and they can all, they don't even have to have kids, and they can recognize what's going on with other people's kids. Yes. Yet we miss it with our own people in the firehouse, the people sitting across from us at the kitchen table. Bobby and I had this conversation earlier about, where we truly fail each other more often is, it's easy for a chief to say, okay, I'm gonna bring the team in, we're gonna do a diffusing and debriefing, all this stuff. It's as leaders and as partners and as brothers and sisters, not paying attention to each other with everything going on in our lives. Take something bad going on at home. People are built differently, and you just keep topping and throwing this stuff on there, and eventually, I call, I'll change the word, the poop bucket. Everybody has one in your life. There's marital problems, financial problems, school problems, kid problems, parent problems, all this. Throw a bad baby call in there. I had a firefighter paramedic with frightmares, waking up in the middle of the night and screaming and seeing dead patients in his mirrors, and we had to get him fixed so we could save his career. We tend to focus just on sometimes the call instead of going, okay, there's a lot of things going on in people's lives. Now you throw it all together, and when your poop bucket overflows, a lot of it, the outcome is determined by who you're hanging with or who's around you paying attention to you. We talk a good game. We have the tattoos and the hats and the T-shirts about being brothers and sisters, but I don't think we do a good enough job paying attention to each other when it comes to all the, as my wife would say, the tells, right?
Well, and I'll throw something in here real quick for the younger people, because I'm the older people, and I'll brag a little bit about the older people, because some of it was misunderstood. But before the advent of devices, for lack of a better word, before the advent of devices, we actually had what were called conversations, and we would actually look at one another and talk honestly. And we didn't have PC culture or language to prevent us from being authentic. So we would say things like, wow, that's jacked up, or, how are you doing? And then one of the things that used to happen back in the day, and I think some of it was misunderstood, sometimes the older guys would grab somebody or grab anybody, or even an older guy grab another older guy and say, hey, man, let's go have a pint or whatever. And the reason they did that was that the alcohol loosened people up. So they would say, wow, that last call bothered me. They didn't know, the alcohol issue could get compounded. And I don't drink, and I'm not supporting, I'm not promoting alcohol to loosen people's emotions. But you can do it with authentic conversation today, because when you look somebody in the eye today and actually talk to them, they feel like they're getting an alcohol rush, because nobody does it anymore. Everybody looks away. I've had conversations with people who are doing this while they're talking to me. And I'm like, you're not talking to me. Turn off the TV, turn off the devices, don't even put it on vibrate, because I know Lasky does that just for the excitement of it. He calls himself daily, but I'm just teasing you. But be authentic and talk about these things. Hey, I just threw it out there, at the beginning of this conversation. I've told other people. I told some of my friends that call the other day bothered me, and I know why. I know why it bothered me, because I was all by myself without tools, right? So I know why, and that's what keeps it from becoming a problem. Understanding why it bothered you. It's okay if dead people and people getting hurt bothers you. Understand that you're not an automaton. It's okay to say, man, I feel awful for those people. It breaks my heart, and it should break your heart. If it doesn't break your heart, hell, go be a politician. They're the most unfeeling pieces of garbage on the face of the planet. So I hope I'm not disrespecting any politicians. But that being said, man, authentic conversations, that's what Steve just said. Nobody said to Steve, hey, man, that's freaking awful, man. They told him it wasn't awful. If Steve says it's awful, it was awful. If Nikki says it's awful, or Jimmy says it's awful, or Kenny, it's awful. You can't, like, some things are empirical and objective. I get that. I mean, I'm not a postmodernist, but how you feel about it. And I hate when people make everything about feelings, because that's gibberish. But how you personally interpret stuff's important. That's your worldview, and it can get jacked up. And so, man, what Steve said is so important. I think the thing that broke my heart when he said it was other people told him it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
It's not your call.
Well, and let me bring, Steve, you were going to jump in with something. Let me bring up real quick. And Bobby, you've heard me tell a story before. We busy department, and we had that month where just A shift got hammered. A couple of bad baby calls. We had the house fire. We lost the 2 kids, and then we had the car go off in the lake with 6 fatalities. We got them out of the water within 4 minutes, but from 6 months to 32. And one of my favorite captains, my favorite, just this guy's on a tower ladder, just tough as nails, great guy. He come up to me, and Sarah and Jennifer, you've heard this before. He came up to me and says, he goes, I don't need to go into that room. I don't need to talk to them people. I'm just fine. And I looked at him, and I'll just call him Enzo, because I don't want to say his name. I said, you got 35 years here. You're one of my go-to captains. You're one of my favorite people. Just you telling me that you don't want to go in there is telling me you need to go in there. But more importantly, you've got a group of young firefighters that just watched their captain, who they idolize, say, I don't need that shit. I don't need this all stuff. Do you think they're ever going to really come and ask now if they saw you do that? I said, look, I need a professional favor. I need you first of all, go back in the room and tell your guys, look, that was just me running my mouth. I just called emotions. This is a good thing. I wish we had this 35 years ago. And then I want you, when you get in the room and they say, so would anybody like to just talk about anything, say anything? I want you to be the first one. Talk about how it sucked or whatever, but show your guys it's okay. It's okay. Butchie Cobb, Bobby, incredible Vietnam vet. Oh my God, decorated, you would believe, soldier, standing at the Globe on 9/11 with the Jersey City Dispatcher, and he threw him back in time. And I had some of his guys come up and say, if it's okay for Butch, for Chief Cobb to go to counseling, it must be okay for me. And he even brought it up. It must be okay for me. So again, it goes back to the proactiveness in your own firehouse. I know, Steve, you wanted to jump in there with something, but go ahead, Bobby.
As this conversation continues, it keeps bringing up more and more things that are, that we could jump in on. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said A shift was just getting hammered with the bad runs. As company officers and as leaders of your unit day, of your district, or of your department, you need to pay attention to the runs that your people are making. When you hear that one of your guys was on, what I would term as a significant run, 10 runs in a month or a month and a half period that had some type of a traumatic associated death, maybe that's when you reach out to that person as that company officer. Sit your guy down and say, hey, I know you've been having a really bad streak. What do we used to call him? We used to call him Dr. Death. When they had that one firefighter that just was always getting the bad runs, we always called him Dr. Death. Maybe that may not be the best thing. Maybe at that point in time, we sit down and we have a good conversation with them. and get them to open up. I think it's all about conversations and having that relationship with our people.
Absolutely.
Bringing
Bobby?
that, and I even say this in my talk. I talk about bringing, and this, you know, a lot of people are going to crucify me for this one, bringing compassion and love into the firehouse. People don't talk like that, but I think you need that for your fellow brothers and sisters.
And that's why
I
we
need
always,
a safe room. Go ahead, Jen.
we always promote, you know, challenging everybody with compassion. And that's a key component when you're trying to get a relationship formed with people. And if you don't have buy-in from the top, you're not going to have, you know, the people below you setting the example, and it just keeps trickling downwards, like you guys were talking about, as far as, you know, if somebody's not willing to talk to people to go get help, it's setting the bar, and everyone's going to keep drinking the Kool-Aid and doing whatever the people on the top are doing. So we have to be able to challenge each other with compassion and talk about feelings and make that an acceptable culture in today's fire service. And it's not a scary thing to talk about mental health issues like the word suicide, talk about depression, anxiety, you know, talk to each other about what's not only going on in the firehouse, but talk about personal lives as well. Oftentimes, you know, our first responders are spending more time with the people who they're on shift with than their own family. So there has to be a unity, and there has to be an understanding on the shifts and in the department of what's going on in each other's lives, so that one call, yeah, it might be the call that pushed them over the edge, but what else is going on at home too that could be contributing to depression, anxiety, any other mental health symptoms that we're dealing with in the fire service.
And when it comes to the whole toughness thing, and Bobby, you and I both have sons that are in the service, and we've talked about this. I thank God, you know, that we have. I mean, he worked with some pretty badass sailors and Marines, being an FMF corpsman with the Navy. And if it wasn't for them, we've had that conversation, Bobby. If it wasn't for the people you would think would be the hardest on that, were the most sympathetic to it, if that makes sense. And it comes down to great leaders. It comes down to people who actually, if you say you care about your people, then you truly care about your people. And, you know, his tours in Afghanistan and his stuff, it wasn't for the commander he dealt with and his gunnery sergeant on both the blue and the green side. You know what I'm saying? I thank God that there's people that, as tough as they are, have that compassion. Bobby and I, we say all the time, we get teased because we'll hug someone, tell them we love them. I don't care. We've lost too many friends to not wrap your arms around them and tell them how you feel, you know, because you never know how the day's going to end, period. You know, so exactly. It's a great point, Jen.
So the only thing I want to throw in, I'm sorry, Jen, go ahead. Pardon me.
I think that something that, you know, everyone needs to be aware of as well is that when the line of duty deaths are less than the suicide statistics that we're getting, and FBHA only estimates that we get about 40% accurate reporting, and our numbers are well above the line of duty deaths every year, we obviously have a problem, and we need to start making this an education program. And we need to start not only educating people on reading smoke and throwing ladders and how to protect yourself, you know, from the obvious hazards of the job, but making sure that mental health is also part of that, so that we can decrease these numbers as well. It has to start. The education piece is key. And
we're finally teaching it at the academy with the probies. Go ahead, Bobby. I'm sorry.
So 2 really important things that came up in the chat box. Don't forget about the families. Significant event happens. Don't forget about offering counseling to the families and getting them integrated and having these authentic conversations, which I think is really the key. But the other thing, Ricky brought it up earlier, and I'm going to date myself, but there's a great movie about Father Flanagan, Boys Town. Jimmy Cagney plays a gangster, goes awry, ends up on death row, and Father Flanagan goes to see him before they're going to execute him. And you know, Cagney's all tough and, you know, it doesn't bother me. I don't care. They're going to kill me. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to plead. And Cagney convinces him to do so that the other inmates hear him. You know, I don't want to die. I don't want to go. You know, act as if he's terrified. And he does, out of compassion, because he was trying to set an example so the other kids hear that he was afraid to die, and he wasn't, you know, being a criminal wasn't the way to go out, and it wasn't a blaze of glory. So it's a kind of a convoluted story. It's an old movie. You got to see it. It's black and white. Your heads will explode if you're under 60. but it's a wonderful lesson. So it's Boys Town, Father Flanagan, and Jimmy Cagney. But to Ricky's, the other part of that story is be careful, because there's a lot of studies out there, and Sarah can back me up, and I know Kenny's looked at this too, because we're in that world. Mandatory counseling, and Jennifer too, you got to be careful, because sometimes you can hurt people too by forcing them to go into something when they're not ready, right? And Steve can probably tell this better than anybody. There's some days when you just don't want to talk to anybody, you know what I mean? And that's important too, or you're not ready. And so be respectful of that. I get it if you got a tough guy who's like, okay, and you're trying to get him to do the Jimmy Cagney thing. I dig that, right? But be careful, be so careful. Mental health's man, I'm telling you, you want to get into wonky stuff. Cancer, this conversation is about two of the most difficult topics in the world to quantify and qualify, right? Where does nature and heredity end and exposure begin? And where does, environmental stresses, as Jennifer so eloquently said, home life and everything else come into play with how it's affecting us at work and all of that, right? How does what's going on in the world around us all come together? And to that end, we've got, wonderful people like Nick and the Brothers Helping Brothers, who on October 19th and 20th are going to be having a great conference in Ohio. Please go to their website. And the Rosecrans folks are going to be down in Raleigh the same week of October. They're going to be the 16th and 15th and 16th. So go to rosecrans.com, the Florian program, check out what they're doing. So it doesn't matter if you're down in South Carolina or if you're if you're a Yankee up north. We got one for both sides of the Civil War. You can go to either one, and that way you're happy. So just knock yourselves out. They speak Southern down there, and if you speak Northern, you can go to the other one. So, but what's so cool, and Ricky said it when we opened up, we're talking about it. I mean, I was hanging around in '95 when I first got diagnosed with prostate cancer. Nobody was talking about it then. You didn't even want to mention the C word because people could think they could get it from you. It was like, it was weird. And now, I remember with DeBron when, he was founding the Firefighter Cancer Support Network and all the great work that group has done, and other groups since then. We've got Cindy L. and her group doing great work, and we got the Cancer Alliance with the NFFF, and people are talking about it. It's okay. And now we've got the Behavioral Health Network, and we've got the Rosecrans people, and we've got folks out there helping people. And as I said in the beginning, I hope it's all towards making stronger people. It's all about post-traumatic growth. And Jennifer just chimed in. Jennifer, the behavioral health folks have classes for families, so take advantage of it. And and Kenny and I will be hanging out next week with our friends from UL, and we're publishing new studies on. We're still looking at toxicity with NIST, and with UL, we're still looking at all kinds of stuff. I know Sarah's got a plethora of stuff coming out. She'll be at FDIC with us teaching, and she's all over the country. Get a hold of Sarah. Steve, thank you so much for sharing. That's an incredible story. Get a hold of Steve. I mean, anybody who's on this panel right now, Nikki, Jimmy, anybody who's sitting here right now, will help you. We'll talk to you. We'll point you in the right direction. I mean, you don't have to. I guess the most important thing is you're not alone anymore. You know what I mean? And it's terrifying when you're alone. Hell, I experienced it 2 days ago. I didn't like it at all. I was like, this sucks. Right. I mean, 30 years ago, I had 35, maybe 40 years ago, had a similar experience. Showed up at an accident in the middle, early in the morning. I'm taking care of people. I'm in my uniform on my way to work, right? At like 4 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning. And I told the lady, I said, call 911. She yelled back, you are 911. I said, call more, I'm by myself, so just that's my closing thoughts. I won't say anything else, but I'll let Nikki talk about his show and Sarah tell us where you're going to be, and please, Jennifer. But we can go a little long, Ricky. It's not a problem. But everybody just say goodbye. But I love you all, and thank you for doing this. It was a privilege to be with you today. It was absolutely a pleasure to hear you talk. I wish we had 2 hours. We could do just 2 hours with Kenny. We could do 5 hours with Jennifer. We could do 3 days with Sarah. I mean, it's Stephen. I'd love to hear the whole story. I will hear the whole story. I'll make an effort to get and hear you talk. But thank you.
Well, let's do that. Let's go around the horn here, and as we're wrapping things up, folks. And kind of give us a little, maybe a push for something an initiative or program, a conference, a class you're going to be at, and then maybe end it with your contact information. If somebody needed to get a hold of you, what would be the best way to get a hold of you? So I'm looking from left to right on my bar. Let's go with Jennifer.
Well, I will be at the Helping Brothers event in October speaking, and FBHA, our website is great. It's actually ffbha.org. You can find a bunch of resources that has my contact information. We have self-assessments. We have lots of tools, information, pocket guides.
If you're a company officer or firefighter, you need to have this in your wallet.
Amen. Amen. And we try to give everyone a pocket guide, and we're always here. We're always available to educate. Jeff and his wife are currently taking it to the streets. They're traveling across the United States right now and just promoting FBHA and talking to departments across the US. So we are eager to be in every department and at every conference that we can. And I thank you, Nick, for having me at your conference in October.
Outstanding. Thanks, Jennifer. Jim, you want to final thoughts and maybe contact info?
Absolutely. Thank you. I started as a presenter for this conference, the Brothers Helping Brothers, and was able to actually talk myself into being a booker / host, co-host, I guess. So besides all the great people on this panel, I wanted to just mention real quick, we're going to have Dr. Doug Daniels, who was the author of the NIOSH test at this conference. Brian Marenko, who's just a genius when it comes to PPE, is going to be there. We're also going to have Karen Torreno, which is an absolute great workers' comp attorney. She's going to touch on a lot of cancer presumption. She's handling 6 of my guys right now going through cancer and fighting the state. So you can find me at firefightercancerconsultants.com.
Outstanding. Thanks, Jim. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And then we're going to throw it to Dr. Kenny Fent. Closing thoughts.
I guess my closing thoughts are, and I'm trying to intertwine the two topics, mental health and then carcinogenic, prevention of cancer. And, I think it's really important. We heard it today about, talking to one another, advocating for each other, holding each other accountable. And I mean, that really will go a long way in both respects. It's one thing to have policies. It's another thing to actually implement those policies. And so I think all the firefighters who are listening to this today, I mean, you can make a difference at your fire department. And so, I guess other than that, I've got a symposium. NIOSH is going to do a symposium at FDIC this year. I think it's the first one we've done. I don't know how long it's been, Bobby, but it's going to give a nice overview of all the research that we've done at NIOSH, looking at firefighters in various ways.
6 years since our last one, Kenny.
So we're very excited about that. Hopefully, if you attend FDIC, you can make it out to that symposium. I think you'll learn a lot. And I'm always available. If you have questions about some of the research we're doing, some of the guidelines that are out there, please reach out to me. My email is really easy, kfent@cdc.gov.
Outstanding. Sarah, we're going to go to you next. I'm going to come back and finish up after Steve with Nick. But Sarah, any closing thoughts?
Just that I have really enjoyed this, and I think that there's a lot of progress that's happened. There's still work to be done, but I think the fact that so many people are talking about it is, and that everyone's taken time this afternoon to just sit around and chat about it, is a step in the right direction. I'm going to be at the Brothers Helping Brothers, and then I'm going to be at FDIC. Thank you. Looking forward to that, Bobby. And I can be found at my email, jahnke@ndri.org. And feel free to get in touch with me anytime if you have anything you need help with.
Outstanding. Thank you, Sarah. And then Steve?
Well, again, thank you very much for including me in this. I want to thank Nick for reaching out to me to be involved with this great program coming up in October. I'm looking forward to presenting up there just north of Cincinnati. I will also be presenting in Hamilton County, which is where Cincinnati is located, we've just made a pretty big effort within our county fire chiefs organization to address cancer and mental health head on, to break down the stigma, to talk about these issues and put things in place to take care of our brothers and sisters at all levels. And that's where we're at. So I'll be there in October. Looking forward to meeting everybody. We have Jeff Dill coming with FDHA. We have him coming down here at the end of October. So we got some things in play here. Pretty exciting.
Outstanding. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for everything you do. And Nick, you want to bring it home for all of our guests?
Yeah, certainly. I want to thank everybody for agreeing to come and do the Humpday Hangout with us. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Ricky. It's been absolutely fantastic. One of the great things we do have coming for this conference, we do have Lillian Carney, the widow of Josh Carney from Midway Fire. She's going to be speaking the second day, talking about her personal story about losing her husband and her efforts to kind of start the Carney Strong initiative and working towards that. So that's going to be a very impactful story for the second day. This conference is only $5. It could be available on our website, which is brothershelpingbrothers.org. And it's right there on the main page. We have great affordable hotel options, and we have people from all over the country coming. So we hope you could enjoy and join us in this conference. It's, like I said, it's only $5, and it's definitely well worth the information.
Outstanding. Brothershelpingbrothers.org. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for everything you do. I'm so glad. Again, Sarah, congratulations on your recognition. We're finally recognizing people for pretty incredible things instead of some of the other stuff we do. That was pretty awesome. So you guys are great. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Bobby, you're at bobbyhalton@penwell.com. Make sure everybody knows that's the email address.
Actually, I got a new email address, Rick. You're not going to believe it.
It's not Robert H. again, is it?
No, it's Bobby.Halton at Clarion, but you can always get me at Bobby Halton at Gmail. Bobby Halton at Gmail is the easiest one. It's kind of just out there. Nowadays in the corporate world, it changes so often. So
Bobby.Halton at Clarion.
Events.com. So like a work thing.
Look at the front of Fire Engineering. You'll figure out all the rest.
The poor people at Clarion, these are really nice people, and they're trying to figure out my street act. And the poor people, I feel terrible for them. They really are just in a quandary. They said, "So you yell at people for a living?" I said, "Yeah, that's what I do. I yell at people."
You have to in our case, but
I'm the fire department ombudsman. But seriously, again, I would just want to say this was such a pleasure, and it's rare to be among such talent. I think Kennedy once said a really incredible quote. He had 14 Nobel Prize winners at the White House, and he said he didn't think the White House had ever had so much intellect at the table at one time before, except when Jefferson ate alone, and which I thought was a fascinating comment on Jefferson. But I felt that way with this panel. I mean, what a group of talent. And if you don't know who Kenny Fent is and Sarah Jenke, and you don't know who Ricky Lasky is or Jennifer or Steve Cohn, please, go online, Google them. They're out there, and they're doing wonderful work. And Nikki's doing wonderful work, and Jimmy's doing wonderful work. So seriously, check them out. Take the time. Get to know who you're listening to, and they're authentic people, right? And so they care it, and they love you, and so do I. And go out and do good stuff.
Hey, it's okay. It's okay to truly care about people. We talked about that. It's not normal for firefighters, for first responders as a whole, to see what they see, period, and lump that with all the other things going on in someone's life. We need to step up and take care of each other a little bit better. I'm at 5alarmleadership@gmail.com. Like Bobby said, we're pretty much all on Facebook and Twitter. You can find us pretty easy. If you have any questions, zip over to those sites. Our next show date for Issues and Challenges for Bobby and Terry and I, and Terry McGrath will be back with us, September 19th. You catch some great shows on Wednesdays here, folks, at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. Get to interact with some great people. We're going to ask our guests to stay online. Don't hang up with us when we close things out. But I know we went a few minutes over. Like Bobby said, we could have done hours and hours on each topic and still not even come close to talking about what we need to talk about. But thank you again, everybody. In closing, we never end this show without asking you, please keep the men and women serving in armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. And remember, never forgetting means never forgetting. Be safe and God bless you. Thank you.